Welcome to the Borderlands Trail and Ultra Running Podcast. I'm stoked to be back for another Bad Runners today. Last week we hit on something that you guys were really responsive to, and I was stoked on it. It was looking at race prices and where are they going and why are they there, and why are they where they're at, and how did we get to that point? And you all were very responsive, by far and away the most responsive any of you had been, defending your race for being what it costs or coming down on other races for what they cost. But we're going to recall some of that from last week, but also bring some new research because many of you asked for some better research on our take. And so we're going to do okay at that. Also going to look at the swag bags because a lot of you called swag bags into question. And the ultimate swag being the belt buckle. We've got some fun stuff to talk about there. And listener calls. Glad that you are here today. Borderlands, somehow we're still not learning. Borderlands. All right, if you're watching, which we put this on YouTube. It's not the highest emphasis, but if you like to watch, sometimes there's things that we call out specifically that you would see. I've elevated my camera on my end. We're working on elevating Wolfie's camera on his end, because we just want to keep getting better at what we're doing here. And so if you have any tips on how we could get better or what you don't like about what we're doing, we'd love for you to let us know what those are. You can call the hotline, run more, 7866. I don't know what the jingle is. I'll put it in here in just a sec. You can call us and tell us, but we want to get better. Like this is to Wolfie's point from Wolfie's World a couple episodes ago, like this is not just SPN, this is ESPN. This is entertaining. We want to be entertaining. We're not here to just talk. If we wanted to just catch up, Wolfie and I could go for hours talking shit about whatever. But we also want to be entertaining. That's of high value to us. And thanks to Wolfie for calling that out in a recent episode. So let us know. Also, real quick, January 30th, my episode with Billy Yang releases. We have great video of that conversation I had with Billy on my quick trip to Salt Lake. They say don't meet your heroes. Well, if Billy Yang is your hero, you should meet him. He was a fantastic person to hang out with, a super encouraging person to hang out with. And I can't wait for you to get to hear how he and I got to engage with each other. It was special for me. And I hope that you enjoy it too. All right, here we go. Bad Runner's Take. It's a bad runner's take. It's a bad runner's take. It's a bad runner's take. He's the Kipchoge of running back. Brian, you had another hit yesterday, in my opinion, 2 days ago on Wolfie's World. How do you evaluate a hit? Sometimes it's just, do you like it? Do you not like it? But sometimes it's comments and it's shares. And there was a lot of shares on that Instagram post that we did of Taylor Spike. So as a shout out to Wolfie's World, comes out every Tuesday. It's a monologue that you do, but can you give us like the fly through, the high level on your episode that did really well this week?
Yeah, man, appreciate it. So I named it Trail Testimony. It's just that, kind of going through and introducing, somebody in the ultra running community that, many of you might know already. I hadn't known him really recently. And he had kind of like a feature article or profile on Kogala. I read through that and, was really taken back by his story. It's a really deep and touching personal story. And, it's woven in and out of running and ultra running and triumph and tragedy. And so, I really just covered off on it in Wolfie's World, brought in some of my own commentary, where I thought was appropriate. And again, I think I don't want to be the guy again on a microphone talking about what I want to hear and want to see. So I want to be the one actually acting out on the things that I like. And that was that opportunity to do so. So we always used to hear guys, in the sport, their stories and where they came from, how they rose out of brokenness to triumph within the sport and life. And, that's what it was with Taylor.
Yeah. Great episode. And I hope that you do more of these trail testimonies. It's great. It's great to hear the story. I mean, so much of the podcast format is the interview and it's awesome, but it was really cool to just kind of get to hear you give an uninterrupted take on it. So good job.
Yeah, absolutely. So anybody that that has got some some content out there, a story that they wouldn't mind sharing with the broader audience, send them over, let Josh or I know, and,
Yeah.
certainly curious to go down some more rabbit holes and shed some light on some other people who are doing great things in their life.
Yeah, man. That's great. All right. Let's recall last week a little bit. We looked at race prices, looked at price per mile. Forgive me for many of the European people who reached out who are kilometer minded. We apologize. We are not kilometer minded. But in some new stuff I'm building, I am calling out kilometers as well. But bottom line, we established what Wolfie called a middle class pricing, looking at starting with San Diego 100, saying, hey, that's around $3.80 per mile. And then we started to compare it to others and see, yes, our VIPA was high. There were some that were a little bit lower. And that was at the 100-mile distance. Well, the shorter you get, the higher that gets, and the longer you get, maybe the lower that gets. But bottom line, a lot of you had a lot of opinions and pointed us in a lot of different ways. I was surprised at how excited you all were about it. And so we're just going to follow up and try and get a little bit more specific on some stuff today. But Wolfie, how would you characterize last week?
Yeah, man. I mean, I think, again, that's the whole point of a bad runner's take, is to launch into some ideas, maybe a little bit haphazardly, but, with good faith and good, honest opinions and takes, and then, see where the engagement and questions and, challenging our own initial perceptions lead us to, hopefully, to a better resolution and, state of the union there with the topic. So, yeah, I mean, like I said, we had RDs chiming in, we had runners here domestically, internationally. So clearly we struck on something, that others are talking about in their group runs or DM chats. So we'll continue to dive into that more.
Yeah. And shout out to the race directors who did chime in, because, especially those who have it's like their career. That's not everybody, but those who did, they're saying, hey, this is why my prices are the way that they are. I'm working on a fairly exhaustive episode about, race economics to serve race directors or aspiring race directors. But like, how do you break this stuff down? And, the pricing, I mean, here's part of the problem. I talk about, I'm an entrepreneur. I love entrepreneurship. I love growth. I admire entrepreneurs when they're trying to do something. But here's a place where, in my opinion, they're making the sport more challenging. Because if you look at a vacation races and you have 3 ultras and you've got, 18 international races and you've got 15 half marathons, well, there's a lot of middle management in there. There's a lot of people who got to get paid. And I'm not picking on vacation races. I'm more so picking on large race organizations. We talked about our VIPA last week, Destination Races, Yeti. Like I'm just naming all the ones I can because I'm not picking on them. This is just how it goes as a business model. Well, you're the one who's trying to grow it. And so if we're complaining about your prices going up, it's because your fixed cost is going through the roof, because you now have a full-time designer and you have to justify that in your pay. And you've got a full-time this, you got a full-time that, and you got a massive warehouse that's 20,000 square feet that you have to put 30 finish lines at and aid stations and all that. There's just so much that goes into it. Whereas a smaller race, if it's a guy who just has 1 race or a gal who just has 2 races, you can put everything in the garage. So the prices are increasing because entrepreneurs are growing really great races, and that is very expensive to maintain on their end. So, that's part of the trade-off there.
Yeah. And I think, so then that's where like the question for me kind of keeps coming back is like, is scaling the enemy of the runner, right? Like, because essentially what we're doing is we're scaling the experience to more runners, but we're not exactly improving it. In some cases, we're actually diluting it. So as we scale these race organizations into bigger operations, the price goes up, as you clearly pointed out, for good reason. But then again, the value proposition back to the runner is where I'm kind of focusing on.
Yeah. And so, I mean, we got 2 lanes, like that. It's a fork in the road, essentially. And it's a perfectly fine fork, because some of you reached out and said, hey, I'm going to look for the race that's most affordable. I can't do an expensive race, and I don't need all of the bells and whistles that surround it. So I think that's perfectly reasonable as well. Like if you just want a 50K that's, $60-70, those are out there. $80, you can get one, and just go have a race. And now, so you've got that. And this is an interesting question for you, because you've talked a lot about racing, ultra running as identity. Do you feel like on some levels, I mean, I know that from a brand standpoint. Some people run Aravaipa because they love it and they align with it from a brand standpoint. What do you think about the person who runs as self-expression, and what we're talking about here in terms of races being more expensive? Like, do you think that this person who runs as a means of self-expression has a higher willingness to pay and doesn't mind paying, the $600 to do Javelina?
Yeah, I mean, speaking for myself, I think as I've grown in my self-expression connection to the sport, I've detached some from uh, from the structured, racing apparatus, specifically Aravaipa, right? I feel like the
Yeah.
two things are working, kind of as opposite magnets. So as the self-expression force continues to get stronger, the connection to Aravaipa, and now seeing things a little bit differently of what it is as it scales its own path forward. There's too
Yeah.
much contrast there now.
Yeah. Yeah. So I guess it's probably not even going to delineate so simply by running as identity or not, because some are for self-expression, because the epitome of the self-expression is the bandit race, the one that costs nothing anyways. And you're just rounding up 50 or 60 people and doing the same route together. I wonder.
That's
Go
one
ahead.
of the questions I had wrote down was kind of like, when and why are we willing to pay
Yes.
more for a race, and when
Yep.
or why are we less willing to pay increasing prices? And I wrote down, or not even that, but like maybe the prices we still pay them, but we race less frequently, right? So maybe you're starting to see the number of
Yes.
races somebody has a year, down by one or two, just purely by
Yep.
cost effect. So I was thinking about it, and I was thinking like it might be less dependency on the actual support of aid stations, crew, community, right? Like as you get more
Right.
experience and do this more, you're less dependent on the apparatus of the race. More internal focus, less external gratification needed, which is kind of
Yeah.
what's big about the race scene.
Yeah.
Yeah, and then just starting to see less value or ROI on your race entry, and just becoming
Mm.
more experienced in the sport. So, yeah, what do you think? What do you think are some of the things that contribute to why maybe we're becoming less willing, or it's more on the conscious?
Yeah. That's a good question. I also wrote that exact thing down of like, okay, one of the consequences of this is that we race less, which is a tragedy. I mean, it could have been a year where, on race entry fees, I spent $500 and I could have gotten 4 races out of that. And, those days are long gone. I got an email from Scott Coomer, who I really like. He's the host of 10 Junk Miles. And really like one of the OGs in terms of how I think about Borderlands and championing the non-elite. He said, I think you guys gave the subject a great discussion and raised a lot of questions, but I think cost per mile doesn't tell the story. You need to figure in what the runners get. For example, my runners, he has a lot of great races. Highly recommend you check out 10 Junk Miles Racing. You need to figure in what the runners get. For example, my runners get a ton of swag, free pictures, free camping, free pizza, and beer at the finish, etc. Some races give a lot. Others charge for all the extras. So I know that when I sign up for a race, I actually don't look at that stuff. I'm not saying I don't, but there probably are people out there who are value shoppers who are saying, hey, what am I getting for the entry fee? All I'm really wanting as an introvert is a starting line, and for there to be food at the aid stations I'd rather there not be loud music playing at aid stations, to be honest. And then a great finish line. And, I love when the race director is at the finish line. The person who's in charge is at the finish line, shaking your hand. Speed Goat is always at the, Carl, he's always at the end of Speed Goat, shaking everybody's hand. I love that. But what makes me pay for the race? It's probably just the reality of when it is, where it is. That's it. Because professionals, we've got limited time. So if it's like, okay, I live in Arizona, I could do this in October. I want to run 100 miles. Okay, this is my option. $500. Do I want to do Javelina? Well, it's my option. I'm going to do it. I don't know that a lot of races have the luxury of being more than a value race for someone who's shopping for time and place. What do you think?
Yeah, I agree. I mean, I don't know that people necessarily prioritize the amenities of the race anywhere near like the top three. It's yeah, exactly. They have kind of like a window and a region that they're looking at, and then
Yeah.
then they find something that kind of speaks to them, distance and the race organization, who's putting it on and the course, So I
Yeah.
think that's probably how people are deciding and building out their calendar, and price
Yeah.
probably doesn't even become an issue quite yet right now, with most people.
Yeah.
So
Yeah. Let
that's a
me,
good point. I mean, like he's out
go
there
ahead.
doing the things that I'm kind of like saying should be standardized as just a given. Like you should get, I think, free race photos and some, how you deliver that as an RD could be different. But
Yeah.
it should be a quality race photo that you get. I think,
All right. What's your take on this? Like some people, race photos get people real excited. Some people think, oh, race photos should be free. And
right.
some people say that they don't mind paying. I have never paid for like, oh, here's a photo of me. Let me pay the $10 for that photo of me. But it allows your registration fee to be a little bit cheaper when you do the a la carte thing. I don't like to do the a la carte thing. Like, do you want pizza at the end? Do you want this at the end? I mean, I'm going to say no to every single one of those. And then on race day, I'm going to still figure out a way to get pizza probably because I didn't plan well. What are your thoughts on the race photo? Should they give them for free? Do you care? Do you think about the race photo? Does that matter to you?
I guess it's like it's only annoying when again prices are in a increasing environment and none of these amenities I think are being introduced as add-ons to justify why prices are kind of ticking up a little bit, right? Like
Yeah.
you're increasing prices, but you're not bringing any value essentially back in a tangible way, to the runner experience. So yeah, I mean,
Yeah.
race photos again, it is annoying. You pay $400, $500 to go race this 100 miler,
Yeah.
and then you got to get robbed for another $65 for a couple race photos. So
Oof.
I don't know.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't know how that industry works. It seems like you could easily give you could give the race photographer a way to still monetize all of his artwork, which it is his
Yeah.
time.
Yeah.
But you give everybody like a voucher for one free photo, and people are probably
Yeah.
most likely to tack on a few more, right? And the
Yeah.
the RD's subsidizing that one race photo credit to the photographer, so he's getting compensated for it.
Yeah. I like that. I like that a lot. I want to differentiate from two types of race photographers, though. There's the editorial type photographer at a race, and then there's the one who tries to get every single person's face. I think as a race director, last year I invested in Zeb Watson, who I'm a big fan of as a photographer, and he caught all of and he also did it for the Billy Yang event. He got all these really great like fine art type photos of the race because I want to use that for marketing. I want to show off my race through that. And I pay the photographer for that. He makes money off that. Last year at my race, I was really fortunate that there was this really nice guy who said, hey, I just want to come take pictures of all the runners. He took something like 17,000 photos that day. And he gave them away as a gift. Now that was on him. I don't expect that. Like you say, that's art, that's time, that's professional caliber stuff. It's that photo of someone with their bib that, everybody gets. That's the one that causes the problem. I think the Zebs of the world, the Mike McMonagals, shit in the woods, like those people taking fine art photos at the thing for promotional use, for marketing use, that's a different discussion. But yeah, I would say it would be nice. I would rather pay if the race is $107, but in order for the RD to give everybody a free photo of themselves, the race became $110. You just bake that in. You charge 110 instead of 107. They're still paying for the photo, but it's going to feel free. But nothing is free. Everything gets baked into the price of the deal. It's better that they just do one transaction at the end, and then you give them all this value during the race, and all that extra added value is the stuff that makes them want to come back and run it next year. All those good feelings of feeling like they got more than they paid for.
Yeah. No, I agree.
The interesting article that I came across when I was trying to do some research is by Trail Run Advisor, which is interesting that there's a Trail Run Advisor. This is going to be in kilometers and in euros. So for the sake of this, just imagine that the euro is 1-to-1 with the dollar. It's not quite exact that, but for the sake of discussion here, excuse me. UTMB races are at the 100K distance, which is as far as he went here, just south of €2 per kilometer, which is the highest in Europe by a long shot. So what we talked about last week was like we were comparing UTMB to Aravaipa, and someone was like, hey, you got to compare Europe to Europe and America to America. We can also go world, and that's interesting, but Europe within Europe is what you're kind of looking at. So whether or not you track with the kilometers thing, we're at about $2 per kilometer for UTMB races in the European Union. But if you are a runner if you're running a race in Portugal, 100K in Portugal, it's half the price of running a UTMB race. If you're in Spain, it's almost twice as much. It's almost half the price. So point being, when we're more apples to apples, which this article helped us be, UTMB in Europe is twice as much. So then if we start to think of the twice as much thing, well, is Jamil twice as much? I'm sorry, at Aravaipa, Jamil Curry, is he twice as much as our what we called middle class pricing?
No.
The answer is, well, yeah, he is, because he's seven. He's high sixes,
Gotcha.
Close to 7 per mile. So, and our middle class pricing was 380.
Okay.
Right. So close. Point being is that the premium that Aravaipa is compared to middle class pricing is the same thing that UTMB is in Europe compared to middle class pricing. Right. It's 2x the average. And so on that level, Aravaipa is positioning itself is a UTMB. And Aravaipa is growing from, I think, 40 to 60 races this year nationwide. So I don't know how many total UTMB have, but they're shoulder to shoulder.
Yeah, I mean that's an honest comparison. That's giving a better snapshot because there's variances in the economies. Obviously
right.
Cultural differences and wages and everything that somebody had pointed out. So I mean, that's a great call out when you bring it in like that. So then we would have to compare Aravaipa to UTMB. I've never raced obviously anything by UTMB or their crown jewel event. But I don't know. I maybe they are the same, but it just kind of superficially seems like UTMB has a little bit more polish to it in how it operates. So
yeah. So there we go. So basically just saying, hey, there's some precedent for 2xing the average price,
right?
And what you are hopefully getting for that is worth it. Now, as we transition out of recalling last week and talking prices, and we transition into belt buckles and swag bags, I don't know actually, if someone's renting UTMB, will you let us know? I'll play the number here in just a bit, but will you let us know what the swag bags are like for UTMB race? I'd love to know what the swag bags like for the main event compared to, say, Puerto Vallarta or any of the other number of UTMB races around the world.
Yeah, I believe they get like a finisher's jacket, like some sort of really nice finisher's jacket. So that's what I've seen.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Someone who's done it, confirm that for us. But here's what I did get: a comment on YouTube where someone said that, and this is a data point of one. So let's call this anecdotal. I'm not saying this is the average, but they said, hey, yeah, for what I'm paying for Aravaipa, I'd love to have a better swag bag. I don't love this swag bag. And so then I hadn't been thinking swag bag because I don't value swag bags at all. That's not a thing that matters to me. I don't think about the swag bag. But you've run Aravaipa. I mean, what is the swag bag like?
Honestly,
yeah.
It's it's kind of like a bunch of sponsors throwing in sample packs of their product.
Okay.
It's it's this backpack thing that I've never used, and I've gotten one every year I've ran the 100K or the 100 mile.
Oh, like the little ones that like cinches up, or is it
it's like an actual
backpack
that's got straps on it. That's like kind of like it's got a shoe compartment in it, so you could like toss your shoes in it and maybe, your race day kit or whatever. So, but yeah, I mean, they're aesthetically, I don't know, they're not my style.
Yeah.
They're cartoonish and kind of just tacky looking. They're not at all like really well made quality. The zipper broke on one of them, so they're not durable. They're like the carnival goldfish. It's fun when you get it at the event, and then you just kind of
Yeah.
pack it away and typically don't really use it again. So, but it's
Do you,
mainly just samples from sponsors to get their product
yeah.
out. Little sample sizes of goos and gels and creams and salves and
Which means those are donations,
yeah,
right? So
yeah.
they're not paying for it.
Yeah, and then you get a T-shirt. That I think Airvipa, they used to work with Rabbit, so at least it was a
Yeah.
third-party apparel company that makes a shirt that people would wear with
Yeah.
some decent technical aspects of it. But now I think, if I'm correct, I think they've moved in-house, right? So he's always the
Mm.
businessman, and if he can capture some of those costs back, then he's pivoted well, and I think he's got an Airvipa company now that sources the shirts.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay. So this is where my mind goes. I mean, well, I think of the food at the finish line. Let me go ahead and hit that up. Is the food free? Is the food good at an R Viper race? Is it special in any way? Is it practical? What do you recall?
Yep. Well, so you've got Freak Brothers Pizza, which is also, I think, a joint business that's owned by the Currys. And I mean, no knock to them, right? Like, I mean, if you're going to create,
Sure.
an infrastructure,
Yeah.
an economy, it's
Capture it
best to
all.
kind of have your hand in everything. So,
Yeah.
but yeah, no, when I moved out here in 2018, 2019, runners would get, a free pizza at the end of the race at the races. So now, no, it's not free anymore, but it's good. It's like a fire brick oven pizza. And yeah, I mean,
Yeah.
they've got other little food truck type setup at Javelina headquarters. So you can get like coffees or, other
Okay.
types of food that are there. And every year that kind of changes. But no, you're
Yeah.
paying for everything.
I have never eaten at a finish line of any distance. I don't have an appetite for at least like 2 hours after. So I know that like Vacation Races, the one I've run the most, they have pizza and stuff there, but I just can't even eat it. I'll do the chocolate milk, and they always have chocolate milk. Everybody, I guess, has chocolate milk, and that's fine. But all right, here's the question that I'm most pumped about, and one that we didn't talk about in advance, but it came to me. What is the dream swag bag? Even before we get into belt buckles, like what would be just a killer swag bag?
Man, you kind of jumped this on me. I wasn't.
I know. I know. I can think out loud here first if you want to give you some time to think.
Yeah, go for it.
Okay. As a runner, I love the idea of it being something, even if it's just the appearance of it, even if it's not actually. I love the idea that it's something that the race directing company, event company paid for. So I'll throw in the swag bag like the food. I'm going to put that in that category. Like at the finish line, you get food. I like that. Something that they've paid for and that they're not asking you to pay for at the end. But when I go pick up my bib and I get the bag itself, as someone who doesn't love swag bags, what's something that's going to make me excited? It's got to have something that is whatever that race is I'm running, and let's assume it's an ultra. It's got to be a piece of gear that would hold up in an ultra. So not just like, hey, here's a neck warmer that's like so thin, it can't even absorb sweat. It's awful. But something that's like, if it's actually a buff or something nice that actually is of quality that could actually use in a race, doesn't have to be that one, but one that I would wear in a future race, like something that's practical and useful, not just something that makes the bag heavier. I feel like so much of the time, to your point, it's samples. It's stuff that just makes the bag heavy. It fools people into thinking, here's 15 things in here. It must be valuable. You go through them all and it's one Dune tablet and it's one thing of that. And it's like, none of this is great for me. So I want something that I could actually use in a race. These races that don't give us cups and we have to use those cups, don't charge me $10 more for them. Like, put them in the bag. That would be a nice gesture.
So they do that, yeah. I've seen that before in their swag bags. That's a good one, and I think they have done that at their races. So,
Okay.
or no, yeah, or maybe Goo was there and Goo was handing them out as kind of like on
Yep.
site.
Yeah. So long as it's, coming to me at no extra cost and it's useful to me in an ultra and it's reusable to me in an ultra. That to me feels like a swag bag I'd be excited about.
Yeah, that's a good call out. I think for me, like I don't know specifically what product it would be, but it would be something that's done with that actual year and that race
Hmm.
commemorated on. What I don't
Oh
like,
yeah.
what I don't like, and I get the economy behind it, right? Is that like you want to be able to bulk buy things like buckles and other swag that if you have run over, right, you can just use the inventory again the next year, right? But
Yeah.
the thing that's kind of frustrating is like you run these same races, right? If you're a regional runner like me, like you could run Aravaipa every year or Javelina every year, and there's
Hmm.
no differentiation between the belt buckles. So
Yeah.
there's not even a year on it. It's the same exact one, from the
Yeah.
same manufacturer in China that mass produces
Right.
all of these molds. And yeah, it's kind of boring. I would like something that's a little bit more unique to that year so I can,
Yeah.
see that and recall that year's memories.
Are you the type of guy that keeps your bib and hangs it on the wall?
I have my bib just from like my old cross country days and like,
Oh,
writing down my time and my place. And yeah, do
cool.
that on the back of it just to have it there. But I don't have them displayed or anything like that. They're tucked away.
Yeah, I mean, someone who loves design, I am largely disappointed in bibs, especially after making my own. And I feel like the 2 years that we've done it, for the Salt Lake Foothills trail races, our bibs have been memorable and worthy of hanging up. And when I learned that the bib companies can design anything you want on there, there's not a limit. I would have thought, oh, maybe it's limited, like it's the old dot matrix printer, so it's just going to be like this. They're very limited. They can put anything on it, and that they always look so boring to me is a real shame. So I only keep bibs that look cool. I don't keep crappy looking bibs. So to me, that feels swaggish. Like, oh, that's a good looking bib. I want that bib on my wall. So a well designed, thoughtful bib is one that I consider swag that I'd be stoked on.
Yeah, and I think for Black Canyon and definitely for Javelina, they allow you to like customize the name on the bib rather than
Yeah,
just a number. And I think that's
yeah,
great because I can have things
I
there that are
agree.
like odes to my daughter, my wife, or
Yeah,
I can put
yeah,
Wolf Runner on there like I've done at times, right? Like so
yeah.
you look down during the race and you've kind of got this personalized bib that could be a source of inspiration for you.
Well, I'll tell you what I did once, and it really worked for me. I didn't know what that was. Mad Moose does that as well in Moab, and I thought it says, "What do you want to be on your bib?" I wasn't even thinking, and I typed something in like 8 months in advance. I signed up way early for Red Hot, and me and my friend Joey and Jared go every year, and we pulled out the bib. When I registered for the bib, Joey was standing right next to me, and it said what I put there as my nickname or whatever is just said "fuck Joey Hendricks," and I was like, "Oh my god, they printed that! What? I don't even remember doing. This is the best Christmas gift I could have ever had." Joey was right with me, and they did it. So, to their credit, I mean, that's pretty cool. I agree with you. So it can be meaningful, or it can be making fun of your best buddy and it giving you a laugh for years to come.
Yeah, dude, I encourage people to really use that as like an opportunity to be proactive and put something there
Yeah,
that'll make you laugh or that'll make you kind of
yeah,
inspired, like so that when you
yeah.
get some rough patches, you can, you have it on you visually to see. Like I see so many people that just kind of default to their name, but that's a missed
Right.
opportunity. Yeah.
Yeah. Have some fun with it.
So let
Okay.
me ask you this
What?
real quick while
Yeah,
we're still
yeah,
here,
yeah,
and because I think we're struggling on this one to kind of get an idea of pricing and what can we do to make a better value out of this for runners. Here's my question, or the epiphany maybe that I had, was that has ultra running and to a larger extent like marathoning and endurance sports always been an adult luxury hobby, and we're trying to
oh,
like make a value proposition out of something that from its genesis never really was that.
yeah. That's super
I
interesting.
bring that up too just to give you context, right? So when you listen to like the people from Western states who are on the board or the creators of like, these iconic trail races, they seem to have always been successful professionals in their career space. Like
Yeah,
really, really successful. We're talking like, top C level, within the corporate world in finance. We're talking doctors, lawyers,
Yeah.
very affluent in the 70s, 80s. And then, so now that it's hitting like a mainstream, maybe the fact that it's pulling in some people with more economic, mainstream wages is why we're kind of banging our head against this. And it was a
Yeah.
unforeseen conflict that was just bound to happen.
Yeah. I mean, I think maybe that's same for triathlon to a degree, though bikes have always been expensive with, more expensive than running. Running probably legitimately was at one point just put on a pair of shoes and go. And it's not that anymore. Yeah, I think, it feels like those pictures you've seen of like two oceans coming together and, different colors. And they're like, I think that probably is a good way of thinking about what you're talking about. There's the affluent side, and less, even more than affluent, it's this ambitious person that's looking for an outlet for their ambition that's not just professional in nature. It's like, I'm very ambitious with my work, and now I want to be ambitious with something not work related, and that's physical in nature, combined with the kid, 22-year-old kid who's out there like crushing a 100-miler and has potential to go pro. That to me is just another way of saying we got two sports happening out there. We've got or it's another way of looking at the two different sports. I've talked about, and as you call the 95% doing it for their reasons and the 5% elites doing it for their reasons. Well, here's another look at it. It's the people who are out there that have some amount of cash more than most, who are finding their place in it along with the dirtbag. I think that's probably I think you're right to diagnose it that way. That's probably what's running up against it. Or someone, even if they're affluent, but they came into it 15 years ago and they're just shocked by the pricing. Maybe that's also what we're seeing.
Right. Yeah. So, I wrote that down just because I thought, it might kind of justify kind of why we are in this conundrum and, struggling more than other types of topics that we bring up to kind of break it down and then, offer a solution that we build back. Because,
Yeah.
At the end of the day, I think, again, the overwhelming voices out there are saying, people will, vote with their dollars. Javelina clearly sells out. Your all 200 milers pretty much are selling out as well. So like, there's no shortage of people, wanting to pay for these things, in the cost environment we're in. I guess maybe it's only a problem because you have more people coming into the sport who you can't, probably can't run 4 of these races and travel for the year. It's just not economically feasible for them.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I think this is spot on to diagnose in that way. Okay. One thing I always tell my kids is that life is not about trophies. Like, don't get fixated on the trophy. It's about belt buckles. That's what you should get fixated on. Get the freaking belt buckle. I don't know what it is about the belt buckle that makes it so romantic to me. I do, because I think about being, I'm the first generation in my family that didn't grow up on a farm or ranch. And so I do feel a connection in the belt buckle to some heritage. And I like that. Like, my cousin wore a belt buckle because he was a bull riding champion, because he still grew up on the ranch. I wear a belt buckle because I ran a 100-miler, and it feels like I belong in that discussion. But I obsess over the belt buckle. I love the belt buckle. I think we have that in common, right?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, the belt buckle was probably, one of the top reasons why, I fell in love with ultra running and the idea of running 100-milers. Like,
some people don't understand that at all, and I instantly like feel like closer to you as a human.
yeah. I mean, and it was just, again, in a society where like you can kind of acquire certain things that speak for you just by buying them.
Yeah.
The belt buckle you have to earn. Like you have the belt buckle on. Like, again, it speaks to something that you've earned and you've accomplished. And then just visually and aesthetically, like, they are badass when done right, which we'll get into.
Right. Yeah. And they're not always. And I guess I don't know. No, this goes back to it. I paid for that belt buckle. Now, here's the deal. If I toe the line of a 100-miler and I didn't finish, do not even offer me that belt buckle. I do not deserve it.
Oh, God.
You know what I mean? Some people will say, yeah, you can take the belt buckle still.
Really?
Yes.
Oh, I didn't know this was a thing.
To each his own. I don't want it. Clearly, I don't want it. But I've paid for it. It was built into my cost. So the race director wins. There's probably some math to that, right? to say, hey, the average finish rate 60%, so I can charge.
No,
I
they
can
better
spread.
have a DNF buckle. Like here's your buckle. If you so
Oh,
choose to, we should have it. They should make a DNF buckle.
this predates our friendship, but I used to make DNF belt buckles.
Oh, awesome.
And I used to give them away to people who would submit the best story of a DNF. I would I'll send you some photos.
Awesome.
Molly's Silver made it. Molly Silver, I think, makes the most legit Western style there in Fort Worth, where I lived for 12 years. So I love that we're aligned on that and should do that more. But, so because I paid for it, I also don't want it to just be a belt buckle. It's got to be awesome. Like, I want it to be awesome. And I've heard that Leadville's is like the sub 24 hours, like a dinner plate belt buckle, like, which means it's big enough to serve dinner on. That's maybe a bit much for around town, but I want my belt buckle to have a great story, which I'll tell. But if I'm not there to tell the story and you see it, I want you to be impressed by how awesome the belt buckle is.
Yeah, and I think these iconic race belt buckles are, like Western States, Leadville, like you said, right? And they're pulling in an authentic way what the rodeo king belt buckle looked like, right? Like if you put up a rodeo buckle and Western States, they're very similar. Just obviously you have a cougar instead of a bull, but
right.
They are authentic to what they're pulling from.
Yeah.
And I think we just need to stay with what works. Like, I don't think any RD should try to reinvent that. Stay within the template of that Americana rodeo belt buckle from a company like you said. What was it? Molly Silver's.
Molly Silver, shout out.
Yes, I mean, I get it. Like, people want to be maybe contrarian or creative, but stay creative within that template. Like every belt buckle falls short that doesn't have that at least nickel plated, or it doesn't have to be like, you don't need to get a silver belt buckle like Western States does, right? Like, I think they always say, like, if you're a sub 24 hour finisher, they lose money on that race because of how expensive the belt buckle is.
That's cool.
Yeah, we don't need to go that extreme. But God, yeah, keep it within the confines of the original template and what it was intended to be.
Yeah. I love that. I mean, okay, so my only two belt buckles I have are from Zion, and I like it. Okay, story matters. I mean, they have local native tribes. I think a craftsman within a local native tribe that makes their belt buckles. It's a good story. They'll pull stuff from the desert and put it in. I don't know. I'm not good with materials, so they put it in, and is it an epoxy or something? And a wood carved Zion. It's good, but here's the deal. I doubt that it costs as much as a silver belt buckle, even close to it. To me, it doesn't look as good as the silver belt buckle. But if Vacation Races is charging the same amount as a race that gives you an expensive belt buckle, to me, the economics of that feel disingenuous. That's a strong word. It just feels like they're making some money off of on delivering a cheaper belt buckle.
Right.
Does that make sense?
I get what you're going. Yeah. Because if obviously races are able to pull it off where they give you a belt buckle that probably has a higher cost to them, the RD, then there's just a different level of why another RD wants to profit, higher off of it, not spend that much, or whatever the case is. Maybe the race isn't ran as efficiently with other expenses, so he doesn't have that free capital to put towards the buckle. But I mean,
so I think the old ones like the Wasatch, Leadville, Western, all those are consistently doing those types. But Crazy Mountain has a good belt buckle. I'm sure there are plenty that do.
Man vs. Horse out here has a phenomenal one. So it's an actual race that you get to line up with the horses on the course, and the belt buckle.
I'd love to do that one.
See, that's my thing, man. Maybe like back to this. What's the perfect swag bag? Nothing, as long as the belt buckle is excellent. The belt buckle is the swag at the end of the day that I care about, right? So like, what do I want? I want that belt buckle that I'm proud to display and wear. I don't wear my belt buckles from Javelina. They're ugly, they're tacky, they're cartoonish, they're boring. I don't wear them. They're tucked away in the closet. And what do I want? I want an engraver on site. So when I finish, he's gonna engrave the year and my time on it.
Yeah.
And that's all I need. That's all I need.
Yeah. I want a belt buckle that makes me want to devolve into someone who does a front tuck. You know what I mean? Like I just want to love the belt buckle so much that I'll just tuck in the front of my shirt so I can show it off.
Exactly, right. And then you wear your your cropped Levi's denim jacket, and you're
Yeah.
James Dean walking around town, just rebel without a cause.
Yeah. Okay. You know what time it is? It is.
Call Run 649 649. That's 786-667-3649.
Listener calls. There's the jingle to help you remember the phone number. We've got a bunch of listener calls, and we're going to just start working through them. I don't listen to them in advance. That would be unfair to Wolfie because he doesn't either, and so we're just going to shoot from the hip here.
Hey, this is Luke in Minnesota. I'm in the Twin Cities area. First time, long time. I am calling after last week's Wolfie's World. Just loved hearing the thoughts about the whole Satisfy Nike debacle and everything going on there. I've always loved Satisfy's design. Never loved the price point. I think the whole thing's kind of ridiculous. Just want to shout out to you guys. All the Bad Runner takes and Wolfie's World episodes have been great. I think the best measure of how these episodes work is I spent about half the episode thinking, that's such a stupid point that's being made. These guys don't know what they're talking about. And then about midway through, I flip and I go, yeah, I get it. I see it. So keep up the good work. Your conversations remind me of good talks had out on the trails, just shooting shit with the guys. So keep it up. Bye.
Thanks, Luke.
Yeah, that was awesome.
Any
Man.
thoughts,
Thanks
sir?
for being a listener and a caller. And now you're going to call in again and can't use that same moniker, first time, long time. But we always love hearing it.
Yeah. This is a good segue into a text that I got from somebody as well. They said, you and Wolfie tend to always offer the counterpoint. Why don't you have someone who's on the other side? You tend to be on the same side. Well, the spirit of Bad Runner's Take is that we are on that side. There are plenty of people out there who are going to offer you the inside the box, or not even inside the box, maybe the saccharine sweet sort of cheerleader champion of the industry takes. They're everywhere. And that's why Bad Runner Takes exist, because we weren't hearing what probably more people think on these topics. They're not saying them out loud. Either the main voices are afraid to or not. But Luke, thanks for hanging in when you think we're making bad points. That's awesome that you hang in until you see the truth, which is what Brian and I tend to believe.
What do we got next?
All right.
Hey, Josh. Michael calling from cold and windy Wyoming. Listen to Wolfie's Trail Runner of the Year monologue today, and I think he really did hit on something I just wanted to say. As sort of a mid-pack recreational runner, there's really, and I'm someone who consumes a lot of content, there isn't a good, entertaining place to fill those gaps. And I think that the list of these trail runners of the year, with a lot of names from over the pond that we don't really know anything about, really put the spotlight on. There's sort of not a universal, easy to identify personalities in the sport that, with a couple of exceptions, I think that it's just not very deep. And to get back to the question of entertainment, I think with not a lot of, still not a lot of sponsorship dollars to go around, there's like a sort of a sense of conformity and this echo chamber that you kind of have where everybody has to talk about the same topics in the same way. And, sort of outlier personalities like the Tony Kripkas and of the world are sort of relegated a little bit. And I think that having more of that is really going to get more engagement from the mid-pack runner like myself. Keep up the good work. I'd like to hear your alternative takes on everything. Thanks.
Right on. Wolfie?
Yeah, no, I love it. I couldn't agree more. I think, like I said in the monologue, that just the kind of the U.S. fandom experience has diluted a bit post-COVID. A lot of that goes with the global expansion of the Golden Ticket series. And yeah, I think we need to be a little bit more conscious and deliberate about building out, these American runners. It's unfortunate that we don't know them as familiar as we did, circa 2018, 2019. And Yeah, I mean, again, those award shows are for us just as much as they are for the runners. They're for us to get excited and celebrate that our
Right.
guy or our girl was in the top 5 or trail run of the year. They're not just for, the runner themselves. So, yeah, man, appreciate
Yeah.
it.
All right. Next call.
Hi, my name is Lisa Rakunas from Wichita, Kansas. I was calling because I wanted to comment on Wolfie's World about the female trail runners and
Uh-oh.
also kind of like some general stuff. But females kind of feel like the same brotherhood but sisterhood, and we are just so excited that there is a conduit for that sisterhood, and we're just, I mean, when you go to these events, we're just automatically best friends, and it doesn't matter where you're from, what you do, what your past is, there's just this camaraderie. So, but I'd also like to address that there's not a whole lot of women commenting on the podcast, so I'd like to see more of that. And the latest about Wolfie's ESPN bringing the E back. The whole reason I started listening to the podcast was because Josh was so relatable, and you were accessible to people like me who are not pro athletes, who are not trying to podium at UTMB or Western States or Javelina 100. And it's nice to have kind of a ground base, grassroots, punk rock feel to a podcast, and something that we can kind of grab onto as, weekend warriors, that we don't feel like we're being looked down on or, having our efforts minimized because we are not in that elite top 1%. So I just wanted to say thank you for putting this podcast on. Please stay as punk rock as possible. I love it. And I worked at Hot Topic, so I really appreciate that, since in the skateboarding scene is kind of incorporated in all of that. I'd like to say thanks to Wolfie. Brian, you're doing an amazing job. Thanks for listening, and you can contact me if you would like to follow up with this. My cell phone number.
All right. I'll keep that because I've got the number in case we need to. Lisa, thank you. I know we've interacted a handful of times on Instagram. I appreciate everything you had to say there.
Yeah, I'm stoked, man. I mean, I think that's a big milestone for us to get our first female caller.
Yeah.
I'm excited about it, and yeah, I mean, I'm a dad to a 13-year-old girl who, I want her to connect with running, and so I'm a sponge. Like I do want to hear from the women's side. I just don't want to speak to the women's side or speak on behalf of them. So a lot of times that's why the content's pointed around brother-in and brotherhood and things that I can authentically relate to. But it's a passionate topic for me, and I think I've pitched a few ideas on how we can, better express our admiration, for the women that participate in the sport, and then also, bring in our authentic, things that maybe we should deconstruct that might be limiting women or aren't being discussed that are true valuables to that side of the participation of the sport. So awesome, man! I'm fired up for it.
Yeah, me too. Thanks, Lisa.
Hey, Josh, this is Luke from Minnesota. I had a
Back again?
long run on the treadmill this weekend, which I hate, but it was really cold and everyone in my house is sick, so I wanted to be home and around them. So listen to your podcast, amongst others, really helped me get through. I loved the conversation with Simon from Like the Wind. I've followed them for a while and gotten emails from them, but never really pulled the trigger on a subscription, and that conversation convinced me otherwise. So
Oh, great.
I love the idea of focusing on the art of running, and I think that elevates it above, some of the more corporate running magazines out there that I've tried in the past and kind of hate because they're boring.
And that's awesome. Thanks, Luke. I'm going to pass it along to Simon. I'm glad. That feels like a win to me. Amazing magazine. The current issue has Leah Yangling on the cover, shot by Mike McMonagle. So there's the Utah connection, but I'm a huge fan, obviously, as well. All right, next call.
Hey, Jonathan here in Baltimore, Maryland. Called once before, calling you guys again with another take here. So we talk a lot about, I listened to your episode on our races getting too expensive, and there was a lot of discussion around Aravaipa. So I want to give you my take here that I think Jamil Curry is the Rob Dyrdek of trail running. Listen to me, hear me out. He is an old school dirtbag. He started running races and being a part of the culture and putting videos out on YouTube, which I would argue today YouTube is much like, it's where the kids go. So it's much like the skate videos were of, the 90s. I'd argue that he, was a part of the culture, like I said, and he started running races, putting them on. And he's basically kind of like monetized his passion as an entrepreneur and like brand marketing, similar kind of what Rob Dyrdek did with DC Shoes or his TV shows or, all of his various different investments. They both cashed in on their brand and being a part of the sport from an early stage. So that's my take. I'd love to hear, you and Wolfie's take on this, Josh. So just looking forward to hearing for it. Take care.
I mean, that is a deep cut. I had to hop on Wikipedia.
Oh, I know all about Rob Dyrdek.
I heard the name. I couldn't place it. So why don't you go ahead and go first?
Yeah. So, I mean, I get like kind of like the hero's arc journey of like kind of how they're similar. And like, Rob was kind of this like, street skateboarder and then, pivoted and, started creating content and then, had the factory and then had ridiculousness, but like, it didn't cost you anything to engage with Rob's content. It was, you just tuned in and watched, right? And to engage with, the Aravaipa race scene, obviously that's where I think we sling more of our arrows and stones, not so much around the content that Jamil's done. I think the content's brilliant. And I think that was probably the gas that fueled Aravaipa's rise, that took them more as like a local Arizona race company and made them kind of an international household name. I mean, Jamil just dropped some new footage on YouTube right now. He's doing this Chipotle challenge and the comments are lighting up. Like anything that Jamil puts online, there's a passionate group of people that are ready to consume and encourage him to do more. So yeah, I mean, I think that's his lane. He does good with the content and connecting with people in these vlogs. But yeah, just as an RD and organization, that's where we kind of sling more arrows.
What was like what made Rob Dyrdek? Like, what was his thing?
He probably just had that entrepreneurial spirit. So like, he had ideas on how to connect with people and bring, skateboarding into people's lives that weren't just fans of skateboarding. He was funny. He was comical.
Yeah.
He was doing sketches and he was relatable to people. So, and it was funny. It was absolutely hilarious. He had no ego about himself. So, he could be the jackass that was, the butt of the joke or the stunt or whatever, or he could be the one pulling off the insane skateboarding trick. So,
yeah. Okay. I mean, I definitely remember. I'm going to defer. I'm so glad that you tracked with it, so it didn't have to take me a second to get up to speed. But I love the deep cuts. I love the phone calls with the deep cuts. So keep calling us, and we'll keep answering. Eventually, we'd like to get to the point where we have so many calls where we can just do a whole episode on it, and we might push for that soon to do an Ask Me Anything sort of deal. But for now, hope that you guys are enjoying the calls. Thank you for calling in. To have 7 calls, this week was pretty awesome for us. So. Wolfie, any last words?
No, man. Again, just another good episode in the can. Appreciate everybody that called in to reference Wolfie's World. It means a lot. I'm not even 10 episodes in, so just appreciate all the engagement.
That's great.
We'll get there. We'll build this thing into a Rob Dyrdek type operation and keep it fun and light. And, we're always going to bring the E.
Yeah, I love it. Bring the E. All right, man. Let's do it again.